Time to get started. Good morning, everybody. This is my first auditorium class. I tell people that I like to be in most time in that close quarters where I can see the whites of your eyes. So I may be walking up on you a little bit closer. Got my hearing aids turned up, so maybe I can hear anything anybody's got to say. So I was approached last week, or at one point coming up on this, and so you're going to teach us how to gossip. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to teach everybody how to gossip. No, we're going to look at this. Of course, it also is asked, teaching an entire class just on gossip. How often do we talk about sometimes just sins of the tongue? When's the last time you heard a sermon on sins of the tongue? Just it and by it alone. And then think about how often we use it. We speak every day. We say things to people every day. We talk about people every day. Whether it be good or whether it be bad. We talk about people every day and want to hear things. And it's not just to talk about it. It's just the fact that I want to hear it too. Talk about that. I'm just going to start off with a verse in here. It comes from James chapter 3. And starting in verse 1. It's not in this lesson book. I don't think I even found it anywhere in the book, but it talks about taming the tongue. It says, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers. This is speaking to me. So for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. For the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. If you read this up here, Thomas said, this came from a man named Henry Thomas Buckle. I had to look him up myself. From the 1800s, he was self-taught, went to school for 1 year, and then did a lot of literary works. His most famous, which was never finished, was supposed to be a 14 volume book here, a 14-volume thing called The History of Civilization. Never finished it. But the only quote that he got out of it, or out of different things that really stuck with people through history, was this one thing. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. And just saying that, there are a world of things out there that we can do with our minds to affect change, but we want to talk about people, All right. Jay says, why is it just women? There's another one. The sin of gossip. We talk about gossip. There's a guy that's talking around a coffee pot in the morning. Nathan Peeler wrote this book, and he starts out by talking about, I get up in the morning, I'm one of these that had, one time we had a clock radio. We used to listen to it every morning. How many got a clock radio still, or no? Where you listen to the radio at all? But he talks about it. Get up in the morning, the first thing that comes on is something, some kind of teaser. Oh, come back, keep listening. I've got some juicy, juicy news on the newest celebrity or whatever's out there. So you're honed in on that. Then he makes it into work, and they start talking about some employee that he works with, somebody, co-worker that he works with, and talking about, them and going through the day and everybody wanting to talk about this person, and then you've got that juicy information. Now you share it with somebody else, and he just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And he comes back to, home, and now he's got a juicy piece of information to share now with his wife. So how often, show of hands, do you go to work and come home, you got something to talk about? I know there's more in here than that, because I do every day. I mean, not to pick on, my wife, Jay, we sit around the table. Well, we talk about things that happen at work. Somebody did this thing. Somebody did this thing. We just talk about things. And we do that in our secret, but is it right? Is there things we should be talking about? And is it something that we should be, guarding our tongues and guarding our lives by, not to be talking about, not to be just bringing those things up? There's probably better things that we've got in our own troubles that we could be talking about to fix those things without trying to fix somebody else's, And it's just things that we come up with. It's just things every day that we do. But it says, what is gossip? So Merriam-Webster defines it in this way. A person habitually reveals personal or sensational facts about others. A rumor or report of an intimate nature. Nathan Peeler went one further to say, gossip is when one shares information, whether true or false, that could cause great harm to a certain individual. Think about gossip the way it is. And I've got an even bigger definition, seemingly for me, and this is going to be mentioned further on and as we go further into the different chapters. But there's different forms of gossip. He says gossip is one who shares information. So if you start looking at the rest of the things where you start talking about gossip, they don't just talk about gossip as the words that you say, the things you say. They talk about you personally. You are a gossip. You are a slanderer. And slanderer, which is, as we all know, a slanderer is supposed to be something that is defaming of somebody. It's a total lie, defaming, and this is what we're talking about. And trying to bring somebody down by a total out-faced, bald-faced lie. That's slandering. Problem with gossip, it can be slander, it can be a half-truth, or it can be a total truth, and it still be just as bad. Something about somebody coming in the door. And the thoughts that you have in your mind about people you see, things you see. We have people come through our doors every day. And we're not talking about just outside life. We're talking about what it could physically do to the church. Physically do to the people that are right here in our own number that we could come up and say something about. Maybe that person gets wind of it. Maybe they don't. But also it forms, you think about yourself, little bitty small cliques of people that want to talk about somebody else, or they got their own set of ideas and they want to bring it all together. So bringing those up, he tells a story, as he calls a parable, of a traveling preacher. You can read the whole thing through there, but it says a traveling preacher comes in, he gets up on the pulpit, and he's out there preaching his lessons, stepping on a few toes, and people don't like it. And they start coming about that He offended others with some rude comments. Finally, we said, so someone informed me that he had been engaging in gossip. And the local preacher tried to smooth things over, clear the water, said, well, there's some good things he had, come out in this lesson. They said, perhaps you misunderstood what he said. And said, are you sure he said that? So he physically approaches the preacher on it. Physically approaches the preacher on it. And he says, yeah, I said it. Wow. Just think, if that happened here, what kind of discourse that could run, amongst the people here, that he would do that. I'm going to move. Who all knows this story? Oh, look at all the people. A lot of hands went up on that one. I actually looked it up. If you got Prime Video, you can see all the episodes of Andy Griffith. Huh? Andy Griffith. Yep. And I went back and pulled up this for research here and pulled up this exact episode. I knew about it, but I wanted to watch it again. You need to watch it again. You might get after this whole lesson, or at least even through this first one, you need to go back and watch it. It is very telling. So if you remember, Opie and his friend Howie, they are writing a paper. And they're writing stuff about things that are at school, little local events within the town. And he brings it to his dad and he wants to sell it to him for 3 cents. Well, his dad pulls out a quarter. You got change? Well, I haven't sold enough. So, of course, Barney gets into the mix. He's like, you got to have better copy. What's that? Well, you got to have better stories. You got to have better things. You got to have things that, people are interested in. You got to have all this. You got to have more interest in it. Things like what we have in the big paper. So he didn't really give me any ideas, so they went to the big paper. And they started thumbing through the things and said, well, no, my parents don't pay no attention to this one. They don't, no, this one. This one here, I think it said something like Mayberry after midnight. And it had little snippets in there of like what's happening next door. It's not a fight going on there. It's the two that are living there. Different things. I said, this is what they pay. That's what our parents pay attention to. This is the kind of stories we need. So they started hanging out in town, listening to everybody's conversations, and then they put it in a paper. So here's Andy and Barney and Aunt Bee sitting around the breakfast table, and he's, Opie's already told him, I've got this new paper, I've got it all going on. They said, well, good luck. And the next thing you know, Barney's eyes get this big when he reads a story in the paper. And it's about somebody in town. Andy is already sitting on the bench up there downtown talking about a preacher with a dry delivery. And there was another one that had a lady that was, here comes a man, his young bride on his arm walking through town. And Aunt Bee and Barney are talking about her and him and all that kind of thing. Of course, it starts out the whole show with Barney having gone to get his hair cut and talking about this. They were gossiping about so-and-so and said, I wouldn't pay no attention. I was watching I was reading my National Geographic. But all the time, Barney knew all the juicy details of what was going on. But they figure out, what has he done? He said, they didn't sell any. They just went around handing out samples. They're putting in people's, car windows, putting them in their mailboxes, putting them on their front porch. They just went around handing them out everywhere so people would get a good sample of what was going on and then buy them. Well, Andy and Aunt Bee and Barney, they're going throughout the entire town collecting all these newspapers, trying to get them all. They missed one, the dry preacher, and he hung Andy into a year's worth of teaching Bible class. So I got you for a month of Sundays, is what he said. But they collect them all up, and then they find out that Opie is actually, they made an entire new paper to sell. But he said, it's okay, Dad, it's okay. We gave it to the garbage man, and he's taking it to the dump. It's okay. What do Barney and Aunt Bee and Andy do? They go to the dump to find it, not to secure it. They go to the dump to find it, to read it, to find out what other juicy material was in that paper that they could read. Andy has a talk with Obie. He tells him, the whole dialogue here says, Andy says, you boys remember how many of these papers you passed out? And he was asking, he said, not exactly, but holding a couple of fingers about this thick. Said, we didn't not mean to do anything wrong, Paul. Well, Opie, you don't pass or you don't put stories like that in the paper. But Paul, that is what is in the big paper. Well, I know that. That is different. See, we didn't make any of it up. It was all things that people really said. Andy said, just because somebody said something does not mean that it has to be printed. You don't circulate stories that are mean and unkind about people. There are too many other stories to put in. Nice stories. He goes, but Pa, when we put in the nice kind of stories, nobody wanted to buy the paper. But you end the whole thing with him, he stopped selling that paper. He tells us, you can make your paper, but you need to keep it, circled into your people, school and the youngsters, stuff like that. Don't be writing any adult stories in here to be passed out. But when he sees him and Andy and Barney are now reading the paper and they're chuckling over the idea that he's writing stories about school, about Miss Mary Alice having her birthday party, and she didn't invite her best friend. There was another story there that I can't recall that they talked about. They were all gossip stories, to pique interest. And like, why did she not invite her best friend? Why did Tommy not do this? Well, you get where I'm going. They didn't shoot that down. Oh, ain't that cute? That was that's where they come off of that. Isn't that cute? We ought to have this whole front row, all of them, all the teenage class in here. Because it started with us as teenagers. Did we not do the same thing in our high schools, in our middle schools, and such, about, and talk about little Miss Susie, with somebody, what's going on them in their life, and this little girl, this girl right here, you don't want to be with her. She runs around with everybody. You don't be with that guy. He's been with more girls than the school allowed. He's been around, talking about people like that, or talking about them just their family. Oh, bless their hearts, they come from a poor family. They don't come well dressed. Whatever it be, but it starts young and it gets worse. It just keeps going on and on and on. And like I talk about, the sins of the tongue. That is one thing, I promise you, we use every day. We think about things every day. And each chapter of this, there's 15 chapters through here. We'll have to rein in some of them, probably two of them together. But the information is talking about the things that happen. And it didn't just happen, we think what's happening now. It happened in the Bible. It's talked about from the Old Testament all the way through the New of slanderers, gossipers, and things that happen with people because of what they said, or lies that they spread, or things in their minds that they wanted to say about somebody else or spread about somebody else. And our Savior was the worst one that was gossiped about. So we'll get to that one eventually too. So Solomon has some wisdom for us. Proverbs 11 said, a gossip goes about telling secrets, but one who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a confidence. How many times, or maybe in life, somebody has come to you, you're a friend of theirs, a very close friend of theirs, and they tell you something. Tell you something in strict confidence. You know, I could trust you. You're my best friend. I can trust you to not tell anybody else. But at some point, whatever somebody else that you trust, not to tell that thing, you tell them. I can trust you not to tell this. So-and-so told me this. Then it gets there. It's not that it's a lie. You know, it's not that you're lying about this person. They came and told you something about them that is out and out true, very true. But they told you in confidence. They wanted you to keep that secret for them and shoulder their burden. There's even further, out in the different lessons, there's another about that one, about shouldering one another's burdens. But they wanted to get that off their chest. They wanted somebody else to know and somebody else to, you know, hold that secret with them and support them. But now you give it to somebody else. It wasn't theirs to shoulder. It was yours. They wanted you to keep it confident. So a gossip goes about telling secrets, but one who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a confidence. A gossip reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with a babbler. So this turns around, let's talk about the work again. You're going to have somebody that's constantly wanting to come up. I've got a coworker right now that I think she's on some kind of gossip channel line on her phone. I don't know what it is. But every little thing that happens in our county pops up on her phone. She knows immediately. Somebody had a wreck somewhere. I wonder who's hurt. Or somebody's been arrested. Oh, I wonder what they did. You know, it doesn't matter. It just pops up. She sees it all. And if you're talking about anything, it's like this lady knows. It's like she knows everything about everybody and intimate details about things going on. I have an association with her because I had to work with her. But I wouldn't sit down and have a necessary conversation with her because it wouldn't be conversations about things we would talk about together or work or anything like that. It'd probably be about somebody else. And that's kind of the way it goes. Do you have those? I don't see your heads now. Do you have some of those, around you that do the same thing that you maybe associate with? Or do you know that they tell these stories and you want to hear them too? So you sit down and listen. It's just as bad to listen as it is to tell it. Because we're crazy enough, we're hungry for it. We want that. It's just an innate thing in our psyche that we want to be in the know about everything. The reason I turn off the news, I don't care nothing about the news anymore. Somebody asked me at work, did you see this? I said, nope. Did you hear this? Nope. I just don't pay any attention to it. I don't know anything about our celebrities out there. I don't know anything about, maybe some of such goings on with the president, but a lot of those are, fake news that they put out there for you to read. There's a whole chapter in this thing we'll get to that has just to do with social media. Only social media and the lies that it spreads. I pulled up one the other day, yes?
I was just going to say, so much of this topic reminds me of what you hear
especially, I can remember, thinking about like President Reagan used to smoke, and, they said that at that time, and I'm assuming it's still somewhat popular, that kind of the operating thought was you kind of have an addiction, but you replace that with something else that's less bad. So like his was, he ate jelly beans. So when he felt like he needed to smoke a cigarette, he ate jelly beans instead. I mean, so with this, like you talked about that innate desire of people to be in the know. In some ways I agree with that, but it's also, if you're busy and you have interests or hobbies, meaning like if I'm actively, trying to advance myself at work, or if I'm, actively trying to, make sure my house is more put together, or I have a hobby, like I like to read history and find out, the depths of, knowledge on, whatever subject you're interested in reading about, then I think that's kind of an outlet for some of that innate desire to know things and to know kind of intricate details of things that
Yeah.
you can feed into things that are either productive or at least not bad. And
Sure.
kind of pick that part of yourself that wants to desire something like that.
Well, Jay, to tell you, we're both. I'm no different than anybody else. I'm scrolling my phone, looking at reels. Guess what the ones that pop up on your phone the most? The ones you stay on about 3 seconds. They keep coming back. All right, so if it interests you to hear about the downplay or whatever, some celebrity out there or whatever like that, guess what's going to come up? Every little rag reel that could come up is going to show up. Mine's woodworking. That's what mine does. It shows me stuff about mosaic stuff of, putting these intricate things together, backgrounds together, stuff like that. But if I'm just going on the internet, if I'm looking at scantily clad women, that's what's going to show up. Again and again and again. It's going to feed you. Yeah. There are things you can look for and associate with people that have common interests in you that are outside of them talking about the interest or non-interest of others. I see it in my place of work all the time, of people coming around, and you have different factions of people, different cliques of people, and they're talking about this one, or this group's talking about this one, or this one person's talking about this one. And all it does is tend to bring everybody else down without everybody being a unit and working together. That's what it does for us. It says the gossip is one who maliciously uses privileged information to his advantage. So most time you talk about somebody, it's because you want to bring them down. Maybe they're hiring you, but then now you want to bring them down a notch. Bring them down to maybe what your level is. I ain't saying your level's bad, but that's where you want them to be, or less than. Maybe that's that job you're looking to be promoted to, and this person is maybe ahead of you. Well, let's just start gossiping about this person and get them in a light that's not so favorable and has an advantage to me. That kind of thing. Also says that gossip cannot help but share information that should be kept private. Again, it's defining you. Not the information is being gossiped, but defining you as the gossip. You are that one. You are that person that is doing the gossip. So the private information will most certainly cause people to look with suspicion at the individual, but who cares if it helps you in some way? That's the bad part about it, It just throws a dim light on them. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to throw a little dim light their way so I brighten up a little bit better. That's the way that's for. But, it feels so good. What are some ways it starts? Did you hear about? Somebody comes up to you and asks you that question, did you hear about? And it's going to be followed up with something you probably shouldn't be listening to. Well, the way I heard it, So you've already told the person, did you hear about? And you give the information, and your response is, well, the way I heard it, you've already been engaged by somebody else, and you've already listened to it, and now you've got it harbored. Now it's a growing thing. Hey, you want to know what? Whether it's I heard, I saw, doesn't matter. It's information. Guess what? Guess what I saw? Guess what I heard? Guess what I know? Just simple little phrases telling you, that, let me tell you something. Anybody heard those phrases come out to you? I know you have. Everybody in this room has heard them. Everybody in this room has heard something of these phrases at some point in time. They've probably all heard them. And maybe even said them amongst themselves at home between yourselves in private. You're going to want to hear this. Say, ooh, but it tastes so good. Words of Solomon. The words of a whisperer are like dainty morsels, and they go down to the innermost parts of the body. He goes on to talk about, that favorite dessert that you've got, that you just love. It tastes so good. You cannot resist, and it just feels good going all the way down till it hits your stomach and stays there. That's the description of what this is. The words of a whisperer, the words of a gossip, the words of a slanderer. You can interchange that right there with that word all the way through. That dainty morsel is that little bit of tidbit of information that they feed you that you just saturated with, that you just love to hear, and just bring it on down to the innermost parts. The problem is, and it talks about the innermost parts, so the phrase innermost parts of the body is only found here in this verse and in Proverbs 20, 27, and 30. The ones in 27 and 30, let me get to that one there again, because they didn't list those. But Proverbs 27, and I know I had some good things to go here. Let me get to it. Proverbs 27, nope, wrong one, 20. Verse 27. It said, the spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all his innermost parts. And then in that same chapter, in verse 30, it says, blows that wound cleanse away evil. Strokes make clean the innermost parts. Thinking about the things that cleanse our innermost parts, when this part right here is the part that damages it. But it also talked about, it said, go to the innermost parts. It said, gossip sinks deep within us, becomes permanently fixed in our memories, and influences our view of others. Our problem with it is when we get it down in those innermost parts, we never forget. Have you seen somebody that you went to high school with, you hadn't seen them in years? Haven't seen them in years. And when you see their face again, they show up. The first thing you remember is something you heard about them in high school, or something they did in high school, or something they did to you in high school. Ever happen? Got an example?
Yes. So, for example, me and all my classmates, we would get together and have a class meeting about our senior trip. Well, unfortunately, some of the guys that were in my class didn't quite make the cut for our senior trip. So they went and started spreading rumors about me and all the rest of us guys and girls in the class. And, well, when word got to me, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not really going to let this get to me, because I know for a fact that what it is they didn't make the sales cut like they're supposed to do of selling the Red Wheel or all the candy that we were selling for our class to help us go on our senior trip. So they sat there and they would just absolutely would just go and start spreading rumors about the rest of the classmates, about the rest of us. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna fish their little Jolly Rancher on a pirate ship. So the way I did it was I went and told everybody in the school, even to the school paper, I said, you know what the worst part about this? I said, those guys right there were sitting the whole entire class at this whole entire time, sitting there smoking weed and crack cocaine. And when word got back to them on that newspaper, they got heaved.
Yeah.
So if you want to spread rumors about the rest of us, well, we can spread rumors just as twice as fast.
But you see where this all led, though. And I'm not going to punch you on this. But think about what you said. A gossip was told, and a lot of times we retaliate with something different, right? Maybe something different, something even worse. It doesn't help anybody. Of course, the school came up with some kind of, criteria you had to meet. You had to sell so much, and these people get to go. Half the time, and when I was in school, it was that rich daddy that bought up everything the kid had so that they could go. They bought it all. They didn't sell it. It was sold. It was paid for. But they didn't go out and work for it, did they? Not like me and my selling my orange sales, man. I was in FFA. Man, we used to do citrus sales every year. I used to take my dad's grain truck because me and another guy named Stacy Needham with Blue Winston, we sold so much we filled up the whole truck, and we delivered fruit everywhere. Yeah, we was the ones that sold it and worked at it. But then you had the other guy in class that come up there. He sold all that we sold and more to somebody one spot. The dad's like, hey, I've got somebody to buy all of it at one time. Fine, I got my work in. I know what I did. But you knew about it. Yeah. Who got the prize? The dude that sold the most, but it didn't matter how he got it. But we talk about them. We talk about them. We can't help it. We can't help it. It's just in our psyche. We can't help it.
You go to rumors and the evilness of it. I think a lot of times it's not with malicious intent per se. A lot of times the person that's telling it is wanting that dopamine hit. You don't know this. I know this. I want your attention. I want your ears. I know something you don't know. Let me share this. A lot of times I don't think the person that's sharing it per se is the evil intent. Sometimes it is. But a lot of times it's just like I said, I want that dopamine hit. I want the attention of you and you and you because you don't know what I know. I found something out. Let me share it.
That's another whole lesson coming up, the why. And that's that in the know thing. I just want to be part of it. I want to share it. And yes, and many times it's probably, not meant to be harmful to somebody else. Like I say, we come home from work and we share some intimate things with our husbands and wives that aren't meant to be spoke of outside of our homes, but does it still make it right? We talk about these celebrities that are doing their things and, oh, this one's in a divorce. Oh, this one's in the drugs. Oh, whatever it may be. That's their lives. We should be praying for them, not talking about them. That doesn't help it. It doesn't help us either. But into the innermost parts, that's what gets me, the most, is that it sinks down, sits there, and that's what you think about. That's all you think about. Man, I had a friend this weekend. We didn't go up there. I had this little group of people. I can't for the life of me remember what it stood for, but we called ourselves the Bobs. Brothers or something, I don't know. But it was our little group because the rest, we were outside. We were this group that was outside of this popular jock crowd. But yeah, we talked a lot about him a lot. We did. Not much got spread around, but we talked about him a lot. But he had a group together this weekend. We were going to get together. Would have been a great time. I have a feeling a lot of gossip would have flown around about people right there that are still in Dresden, Tennessee. That, you know, the ones you were in high school, they're going to make big and great things, and they're still there. Didn't go nowhere. Still in the little town of Dresden. Never moved on. Yeah, those are the ones that we probably would have talked about. I have a feeling. So discussion, we got some questions. This is where we get involved. So since gossip permeates all parts of our society, what are the best practices for recognizing it and preventing ourselves from listening to or engaging in it? Sir? That's a great word. How hard is it? Yeah.
I'll sit there and call her and say how her and my stepdad are doing, because I know they're not the best health. But my mom, she'll sit there and she'll go on about everything except for the topic that I'm talking about. And she'll just go, well, son, did you hear what happened to this person here the other day? Oh, what happened? Oh, son, they passed away about with cancer or a heart attack. I'm like, son, I get told to talk about the daily gospel not in the township.
Yeah.
I called to talk to you and Dad because I know you guys ain't doing up to par, but if you want to go off the stage on this, so you know what? I'm not going to hear that.
Yeah. You know, of course, we talk about our neighbors and talking about somebody that's next door to us that, okay, they did get cancer. Well, now we start talking about all the reasons why they got it. Oh, they smoked for their entire life. That's what they did. He got liver cancer. He's got cirrhosis of the liver. He drank himself his entire life. That's what he did. You know, whatever things affecting somebody, we wanted to go, you know, rationalize it and say, this is why this is so. This is why they've got it. This is why. When we had no idea why. Then we'll get into it further. It's that, you know, a lot of the information you get that somebody else tells you, did you ever go to the person that is spoke of about and ask them, is this so? Is it true? You know, did this really happen? You know, there was a craziest thing on Facebook here a while back. Like I say, you know, make no mistake, I'm a Tennessee fan. Had this thing pop up on Facebook, right on the read, said, Josh Heupel is going to quit. He's going to finish out this contract and he's going to be done. First thought, I'm like, what? I'm like, going to my people, they're talking about Tennessee, stuff like that. I said, I bet that's fake. Look at it, research a little bit. It ain't true. He's going to be here. He's got a contract through to 2033. You know, as long as he keeps winning and we don't kick him out the door, we'll be all right. But you know, that stirred a pot. Stirred a pot with me. But what about something else that you bring up like that? You want to know the whys. But yeah, ignoring it. Removing yourself from it. You know, there's certain, I sit at lunch every day with the other managers and such within my department, administrative people. We all try to come together around lunchtime. A lot of times it's talking about business, talking about stuff in the department. It's the only time we really get, it's kind of like a lunch, you know, meeting more than it is just lunch. But it always seems to turn into something else. That's when I like, well, I'm done with lunch. I'll see y'all later. You know, since I read this back, I started reading this book back before we went to Dominica and reading it down there and such. And ever since reading it, it's like an eye-opening thing. I encourage you to read it. It's got a lot of good information in it. And see what it's like then after you go to work or you go to different places, you go to family gatherings, you know, even if that, and see what it's like after that. All right, do you have a different other than what we talked about, do you have a different definition of gossip or something you feel should be added to the definition we'd already given? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Believe nothing you hear and only half that you see. I tell people at work all the time, being a manager for the past couple of years has been an eye-opening experience. I learned a new word, or at least maybe not learn a new word, but come to have appreciation for the word perception. People have different perceptions about what somebody said, what somebody did, what somebody saw. And you got to get to the bottom of what that perception was. And then address the issue. Perceptions. Ask questions. Don't just take face value what somebody tells you. All right. What were some negative effects of gossip that you have seen? Oh, ringing the bell. Well, let me put this out there. I encourage you. Think of stories, think of things that you have personally witnessed. Things that gossip has affected you in your life. Things that may have affected somebody else in their life. And if you feel brave enough to give them to me, I won't say your name. I'll just use them as a story. Bring them to me. And we'll just see the examples of what that is out there. But in what ways does listening to or engaging in gossip affect us? How does that affect us? Listening to or even engaging in it?
It's against the law to steal.
It is.
Everybody understands that. But it's also against the law to receive stolen merchandise. You will be held just as guilty by the law to receive stolen merchandise. So listening to gossip is receiving something you should not be receiving. So it's just as wrong. If you receive gossip and you enjoy gossip, you're just as wrong as a gossiper.
Yes, sir.
You have to stop it. You only have to stop it once. If you tell that gossip one time, I don't want to hear that. They won't ever speak to you again, but they won't gossip to you. For
That's
sure.
true.
Just have to do it once.
That's it. Perfect. Thank you all. Appreciate you.